Welcome back to another Procreate tutorial. Today we're going to learn how to create this cute digital paper cut space scene. This incorporates both digital paper cuts as well as a little bit of digital quilling. If you want to learn how to actually do this technique, you can do that in my digital quilling course. That course is available over on Skillshare as well as on my own course and community site. I've got links to both of those in the description down below. For this tutorial, I've actually provided you a PNG file of this digital quilling piece of the rocket already done. It even includes the drop shadow. Let's get started. We're going to come to our plus icon here to create a new canvas. For this one, we're going to use a square. To start out this design, we're going to color drop the background color. We're going to grab this darkest blue right here and just drop that onto the background. And then we're going to make the 3 circles right above that. We're going to add 3 new layers. Come to the one right above the background. We're going to grab this next lightest blue here and grab some kind of a thick monoline brush. I have a really thick one that I like to use. I'm going to pinch to zoom and shrink my canvas down. And then we're just going to make a really nice arc. If you hold your pencil at the end, it will snap to an arc that you can then edit by tapping right up here. And you can move these points around if you want it to be a little more of a curve. And we can always adjust this a little bit later. Then we're just going to color drop to fill that in. We're going to do the same thing on these other 2 layers with the next lightest blue. Coming a little bit below that. Hold your pencil, color drop, and finally this top layer, grabbing this lightest blue. And color dropping to fill in. The next thing we're going to do is add 2 layers for our clouds. Right above this on the top. Our first cloud is going to be this shade of gray right here. And you can freehand these to be however you'd like them to look. I actually put that on the wrong layer, so I'm going to tap and hold and drop it down there. Coming to what's now the top layer, I'm going to grab this color. It's almost white, it's just a little tiny bit of gray in there. And put another layer of clouds on top of this. You can have some of these be bigger, some of these a little bit smaller. Add some variety in there. Whatever you want your clouds to look like. And the last element we need on here before we add our rocket is some stars. Let's add another new layer at the top. We're going to grab this bright yellow here. And I'm going to use a smaller brush for this. And just freehand these. You can use auto shape to get a closer approximation of a perfect star and then finish it off by hand. Sometimes that's easier. If you tap and hold your eraser, you'll erase with that same brush. And then I like to, it's still a little too big. I like to come in here and give these a nice point, but if you like rounded stars, that's totally fine as well. I'm going to clean up this star and add a few more, and then we'll be right back. Now we've got 5 stars spaced out with a little room for our rocket left here. We're going to add a new layer right at the top. Now I'm actually going to pinch to combine these stars, but you could leave them separate or group them, whatever you'd like to do. Now on this new layer, I'm going to come to my wrench, that's my actions menu, come down to add, and either insert a file or a photo depending on where you save that graphic. This will import the rocket, and then you can resize it however you need. And you'll see it comes in already in 3D with all of the shadows and everything. It looks a little weird right now because everything else is flat. We haven't added the 3D effect to the rest of the graphic. We're going to do that right now. So come to your stars layer. We're going to duplicate this twice. We always want to duplicate the bottom layer. I like to group these to keep my layers panel nice and clean. Swipe to the right on the other two and choose group. And we're going to rename this to stars. I'm going to repeat that for all of these other groups. And the only one we don't need to do this for is the background. We can go ahead and add a layer above that because we're going to need that later, but it doesn't need to be duplicated. In order to create our 3D effect, we need to add both shadows and highlights to this. So what we're going to do is come to the bottom layer of each group, and we're going to go to this magic wand, which is our adjustments, down to hue, saturation, and brightness. We're going to slide that brightness all the way down. We're basically turning these black. For the middle layer, we're going to select it, do the same thing, come to adjustments, hue, saturation, and brightness. And for this one, we're going to adjust it up to anywhere from 60 to 70%. Lighter colors, you don't need to go quite as far. You just want to have a good contrast between these two layers. So we're going to go ahead and do that for all of the groups. Now for these clouds, it's going to be a little bit different because there's not really a lot of room for contrast here. On the gray ones, we're basically going to take this almost all the way up to white. And what we need to do on the white ones is actually take the top layer down a little bit, just so we have some contrast. We're still going to make this bottom one black because this is going to be our shadow. And then we're going to take our top layer and bring that down maybe 5%. Again, just so we have a little bit of contrast between those two. If it's already at 100% white, the only way to go is down. Let's finish off with our stars. Unfortunately, you can't do these in bulk, but you do kind of need to adjust based on the color, so that works. This next step is where we're going to see the magic happen and turning this into 3D. You need to pinch this down a little bit because we're going to be using both edges of this. In our groups, we're going to tap on the topmost layer that is black. So in the stars group, the bottom layer where it's black. And then we're going to slide to the right on all of the other black layers. That will multi-select. There we go. Now we're going to come to this arrow, which is our transform tool. Make sure that you're on uniform. And we're just going to tap just a little bit off of one corner. Now the way I have this, we're going to follow the shadows that are on the rocket, which means I actually have the light coming from here. Most of my videos I have the light coming this direction, so that threw me off a little bit. What we're going to do is have the light coming from this corner, which means all the shadows are going to follow the rocket. So what we're going to do is start tapping over here so we can start to see that black appearing a little bit. And then we're going to adjust these individually a little bit later. Now we're going to do a similar thing with the highlights. We're going to offset them. Let's tap our highlight in our stars, which is our top group, and slide to the right on the middle layer in every other group. And This is multi-selecting. Come back to our transform tool. And these we're going to go opposite of our shadows. We're going to pull them over this way a little bit. We're trying to get so we can see the edge of our paper a little bit. See that? All right, and you can adjust that to however it looks good to you. And one thing we are going to need to clean up later is some of these edges. I might adjust the stars individually because it looks like they've moved a little bit too much. So what we can do is on this middle layer, take a really small brush. We're going to sample this color by touching it with a finger. And then we're just going to connect it right here. Still too big. There we go. This is the edge of our paper that is the star. If you have these little kind of fragments of color, you can just grab your eraser and get rid of those. And that's going to show up on different layers depending on which color it is. The shadow you don't need to connect because we're going to blur that. So let me get these stars cleaned up real quick and I'll be right back. All right, we've got our stars all cleaned up and now we're ready to adjust our shadows. We are going to do this individually for each group. Let's go ahead and start with our stars here. Select the black layer, that's our shadows. We're going to come to the magic wand under adjustments and come down to Gaussian blur. And then you can just slide your pencil across the screen until you see a good amount of blur there. The more blur you have and the further offset it is, the more it's going to look like the stars are popping off of the page. Kind of like that rocket. That looks pretty good. And once we're done with this group, I like to collapse it just to keep this clean. Let's go ahead and start with this back blue circle here. Come back to our adjustments to Gaussian blur. Slide that across. See a good amount of blur on that. And if you feel like it's too strong, you can come to this little N right here, tap that and adjust the opacity. That's how transparent it is. And we just repeat this for the other groups. Usually the closer something is, or the closer the pieces are together, the less blur and the lighter that shadow is going to be. All right, now we're working on these gray clouds right here. Maybe those are a little bit further away. Give it more of a blur and offset. And then we can take this opacity down a little bit. And then we have one more set of clouds to do. Now we have a completed 3D digital paper cut piece. One thing we can do to level this up is actually add the paper textures in here. Now there's two different ways to do this. We can add a layer right underneath the rocket and just put one single paper texture in there. Either insert a file or a photo, depending on where you have your paper texture saved. You need to make sure that it's covering your entire canvas. And then we're just going to change our blend mode. Usually overlay works pretty well if you have a good high contrast texture. And that looks pretty good. But what you can do is actually use different paper textures on each group. And that will make them stand out a little bit more. Let me show you the other one that we have in here. For this one, we have some different textures on the background versus the circles versus the clouds and the stars. In order to do that, we've added a layer that is a clipping mask attached to each of these groups. And if the texture is not strong enough, you can double it up. It's a little bit more work, but it gives a really nice effect. I hope you found that helpful. I love showing people how to combine creativity and technology on this channel. If you enjoyed it, I would appreciate it if you took just a quick moment to give me a thumbs up down below. It really does help out the channel and just tells YouTube that more people should watch this. If you want to learn some more Procreate tips and tricks, make sure you watch this video next.